They said she's used to scraps and sent me to the garage. Then a woman in a limousine asked for me. My name is Chloe Matthews. I've always been the girl who did all the dirty work. Not because I liked it, but because I had no choice. I grew up with nothing, just my mom and me, scraping by in a small, rundown apartment on the edge of Southgate, a neighborhood most people avoided. I learned early on how to be tough, how to take whatever came my way. But I also learned to be kind, to show empathy, even when the world around me didn't. Little did I know that kindness would eventually set the stage for a revenge story I'd never forget. It all started on a hot summer day, a day like any other. I had been working at the Grand Kitchen, a fancy restaurant on the corner of 5th and Oak. It wasn't a glamorous job, but it paid the bills. I was just a dishwasher, cleaning plates for wealthy customers who wouldn't even glance at me if they passed me on the street. I didn't mind. It was the only work I could get, and I was used to being invisible. That afternoon, I was in the kitchen, scrubbing a mountain of dishes when Claire, one of the waitresses, came in. She was always so perfectly put together, with her blonde hair styled and her uniform crisp. She was one of the regulars who thought she was better than everyone else. She walked in with a smug smile on her face, clearly ready to get on my nerves. "Hey, Chloe," she said, her voice dripping with fake sweetness. "The owner asked me to tell you to head to the garage and clean the storage area. Apparently, they think you're used to scraps." Her words cut deeper than she realized. I tried to keep my face neutral, but inside I was boiling, used to scraps. She was just like everyone else, treating me like I didn't matter. But I didn't say anything. Instead, I just nodded and grabbed my cleaning supplies. What else could I do? The garage wasn't far, and I figured if I just did my job, I'd be left alone. But as I walked toward the back of the restaurant, something strange happened. I caught a glimpse of a black limousine parked by the back entrance. It was unusual for a limo to be in that part of town, especially at this time of day. I paused for a moment, wondering who could be inside. The limo driver noticed me and gave me a quick wave, but I just turned away. I didn't have time to wonder about rich people's problems. When I reached the garage, the air was hot and thick with the smell of cleaning supplies. The storage area was cluttered with old boxes and broken equipment. It was dark and quiet, the kind of place people like me were often sent to out of sight, out of mind. I was about to start cleaning when I heard footsteps behind me. I turned around, expecting to see one of the other workers, or maybe Claire, coming to make sure I was doing my job. But when I looked up, I saw someone completely unexpected. A woman in a stunning black dress stepped into the garage, her heels clicking on the concrete floor. She had dark hair pulled back into a neat bun and wore sunglasses that hid most of her face, but I could tell she was someone important. She looked around, as if she were inspecting the place. "Are you Chloe Matthews?" she asked, her voice smooth and calm. I nodded, unsure of what was happening. "Yes, that's me," she smiled faintly, like she knew something I didn't. "I've been watching you, Chloe. I've heard a lot about you." I blinked in confusion. "What do you mean?" "I think you're exactly who I need," she said, stepping closer to me. "I'm Carla Davenport, and I run a company. You could call it an exclusive service. I've been looking for someone like you." I still had no idea what was going on, but there was something about the way she spoke, the confidence in her tone, that made me listen. "I'm afraid you've been misinformed about your place here," Carla continued, her eyes narrowing. "You've been treated like you don't belong. But I think you do. In fact, I know you do." I was taken aback. Was she offering me a job? What could someone like her want with someone like me? Before I could say anything, she pulled out a business card and handed it to me. "Call me when you're ready to leave all this behind. You're smarter than they give you credit for. I can show you a way out of here." I looked down at the card in my hand, still unsure what to make of all this. My head was spinning. Just moments ago, I had been angry, cleaning up after others who looked down on me. Now here was a woman offering me something better, something I hadn't dared to dream about. "I'll be waiting," she said, turning to leave. "Don't let them make you feel like you don't deserve more." As she walked away, I stood there, stunned. The garage suddenly felt smaller, suffocating. Claire's words echoed in my mind. "She's used to scraps." I had always felt like I didn't matter, like I was invisible. But this woman, this stranger, had just opened a door I didn't even know existed. I wasn't sure if I should believe her. But something deep inside told me I had to try. For the first time in my life, I didn't want to settle for scraps anymore. I stuffed the card in my pocket and turned back to the task at hand, but my mind kept racing. What if this was my chance? What if I could escape this life? And what if I could make them regret ever underestimating me? I didn't know how or when, but I knew one thing: this was just the beginning. I would get my revenge. The next few days passed in a blur. I went through the motions at the grand kitchen, cleaning dishes, sweeping floors, and taking out the trash. But my mind was a million miles away, replaying the conversation with Carla, over and over again. What was she offering me? Was it real? Was it a trap? I couldn't shake the feeling that something big was about to happen, something that could change my life forever. I kept the business card in my pocket, never letting it out of my sight. Every time I thought about calling Carla, I hesitated. I wasn't sure if I was ready to make such a bold move. The world I knew, the world I was stuck in, was familiar. It was a life where I knew how to survive. But this new path, the one Carla seemed to be offering, was unknown. What if it wasn't as glamorous as she made it seem? What if it was just another way for someone like her to take advantage of someone like me? But then, the words that Carla had said to me echoed in my mind. Don't let them make you feel like you don't deserve more. I had spent my entire life feeling like I didn't deserve better, like I was destined to clean up after the rich and powerful. Maybe it was time for a change. I knew I couldn't stay in the garage forever, scrubbing floors and stacking dirty plates. I had to make a decision. The next day, after my shift ended, I found a quiet spot behind the restaurant and pulled out Carla's card. My heart pounded as I dialed the number, my hands shaking slightly. It rang once, twice, 3 times, and then she picked up. Hello, Chloe. Carla's voice was warm and inviting. I'm glad you called. I don't know what to say, I stammered. I don't know if I'm ready for this. It's okay to be nervous, Carla reassured me. But I promise you this is your chance to step into a world where you belong. I'm offering you an opportunity that most people only dream of. You just have to take that first step. I took a deep breath, the weight of the decision heavy on my shoulders. What do I need to do? Meet me at the corner of 5th and Oak at 10 p.m. tonight. I'll take care of the rest. The call ended abruptly, and I sat there for a moment, staring at the phone in my hand. 10 p.m., it seemed like such a strange time to meet someone, especially in a place like 5th and Oak. It was a busy intersection, full of life during the day, but quiet and almost eerie at night. But this was my chance. I had to take it. When the time came, I found myself standing on the corner of 5th and Oak, looking around nervously. The streetlights cast long shadows, and the only sounds were the distant hum of traffic and the occasional rustle of leaves in the wind. I was alone, save for the occasional car passing by. Then I saw it. The familiar black limousine rolled up to the curb, its engine purring softly. The tinted windows were down just enough for me to catch a glimpse of Carla sitting in the back seat, her expression unreadable. Get in, she said, her voice calm but firm. I hesitated for a moment, the weight of what I was about to do sinking in. But then I pushed the doubt aside and opened the door, sliding into the back of the limo. Once I was inside, Carla wasted no time. I've been watching you, Chloe. You've got something they don't. You're sharp, you're capable. And I think it's time you stopped being their doormat. Her words were like a fire that sparked something deep inside me. All this time, I had been just a worker, just a nobody. But here, in this limo, with Carla, I could feel the world opening up to me. I could feel myself starting to believe I was worth more than the scraps they threw my way. I want you to come with me. Carla continued. I'm offering you a chance to work for me. Really work for me. But it's going to take some courage. Are you ready for that? I swallowed hard, my heart racing. What do you mean by really work for you? Carla's lips curled into a small, knowing smile. I run a company that's all about making people's problems disappear. You'll be helping me with some high-profile tasks. Trust me, it's going to be worth your while. But first you'll need to prove you can handle the responsibility. I nodded, not fully understanding what she meant, but too eager to question it. The limo drove for what felt like an hour, winding through streets I'd never been on before, passing massive mansions and sleek modern buildings that made the streets I knew seem small and insignificant. Eventually, we pulled into a private driveway, and Carla gestured for me to follow her out of the car. This is your first test, Carla said as she led me to a grand estate hidden behind tall iron gates. The mansion stood tall and imposing, with lights shining brightly from the windows. This is where it starts, she continued. This is where you show them who you really are. I felt a rush of excitement mixed with nerves. Whatever was going to happen here, I could already feel that this was more than just a job. It was my chance to prove to everyone who had ever underestimated me that I wasn't the girl who would clean their floors forever. Before I could say anything, Carla turned and walked toward the front door, motioning for me to follow. As I stepped forward, I glanced back at the limo, but the driver was already gone, and the gates were slowly closing behind me. This was it, the beginning of something bigger. Little did I know, the real challenge was just about to begin. The door to the mansion creaked open as we stepped inside, and I couldn't help but stare in awe at the interior. The walls were adorned with expensive paintings, and the floors gleamed with polished marble. A chandelier hung from the ceiling, casting soft light that bounced off every surface. Everything about the place screamed wealth and power. This wasn't the world I was used to, the dimly lit, cluttered kitchen, with grease stains and stacks of dirty dishes. This was something entirely different. Carla led me through the grand entrance hall, her heels clicking on the floor, and stopped at the base of a wide staircase. "This is where it all begins, Chloe," she said, her voice low but intense. "The people in this house, they have money, connections, and influence. They think they can control the world. But they don't understand power the way I do. And they certainly don't understand it the way you will." I nodded, still trying to wrap my head around everything she was saying. What did she mean by power? And what kind of role was I really going to play in all of this? My mind raced with questions, but I pushed them aside. I had to stay focused. I had to prove myself. Carla motioned for me to follow her as she climbed the stairs, each step echoing in the silence of the mansion. When we reached the top, she stopped in front of a door and knocked twice, waiting for a response. A voice called from inside, "Come in." Carla opened the door, and I followed her into a large study. The room smelled of leather and old books, the shelves lined with volumes I couldn't even begin to guess the worth of. Behind a massive wooden desk sat a man I didn't recognize, tall, well-dressed, with a sharp jawline and piercing eyes. He looked every bit the part of someone who had made it in the world, someone who didn't need to worry about anything. "Chloe, meet Mr. Bellamy," Carla introduced, her tone formal. "He's one of the key players in our operations." Bellamy's gaze shifted from Carla to me, his eyes scanning me with interest. "So this is the girl you've been talking about?" he asked, his voice cold and calculating. Carla nodded. "She's the one. She's got the potential to be something much bigger than she realizes." I shifted uncomfortably under Mr. Bellamy's gaze. Something about him made me feel small, like I didn't belong in the same room as him. But I didn't back down. I had to show them I could handle whatever they threw my way. Mr. Bellamy stood and walked toward me, his eyes never leaving mine. "I hear you've been working in the restaurant industry. Cleaning up after people, doing the dirty work. How does that feel?" he asked, his voice smooth but edged with something I couldn't quite place. I swallowed hard, but held my ground. "It's a job," I said, trying to sound confident. "Someone has to do it." He smirked, his eyes narrowing slightly. "And you think that's all you're worth? Cleaning up after rich people? You think that's the best you can do?" I clenched my fists at my sides, the words stinging more than I expected. But I didn't show it. Instead, I took a deep breath and said, "No, I don't think that's all I'm worth." There was a moment of silence as Mr. Bellamy studied me. Finally, he nodded, seemingly satisfied. "Good, that's what I like to hear. You're going to need that fire if you're going to make it here. Because here, we don't settle for anything less than the best." Carla stepped forward, her smile returning. "Mr. Bellamy's right. You'll have to prove yourself. But I think you're up for it." I nodded, not entirely sure what I was agreeing to, but determined to see it through. I had come this far. There was no turning back now. "Good," Mr. Bellamy said, his tone more approving now. "We'll see how you do." With that, he turned and walked toward the window, looking out over the estate. The room fell into an uncomfortable silence as I stood there, unsure of what was expected of me next. Carla, however, seemed completely at ease. She turned to me and gestured for me to follow her once more. "We'll get you settled in," she said, her tone lighter now. "There's plenty for you to learn, but don't worry, we'll be teaching you everything you need to know." I followed Carla down the hallway, my heart racing. What had I gotten myself into? What kind of world was this? As we passed by a few doors, I couldn't help but wonder if I was stepping into something far bigger than I could handle. Carla led me to a small, luxurious guest room at the end of the hall. It was far more comfortable than anything I'd ever had. The bed was huge, and the room was decorated in soft, elegant tones that felt more like a palace than a guest room. "This is where you'll be staying," Carla said, her voice almost too sweet. "For now at least. We'll see how you do." She gave me a pointed look, and I understood what she meant. If I didn't prove myself, I wouldn't be staying here for long. "Thanks," I said, my voice barely above a whisper. "I won't let you down." Carla smiled, but there was something cold behind it. "I'm sure you won't," she said before turning to leave. Just remember, Chloe, you're in a different world now. Don't forget that. As the door closed behind her, I sank down onto the bed, my mind spinning with everything that had happened. I had stepped into a new world, but was I really ready for it? Was I ready to play the game at this level? And more importantly, was I willing to lose myself in the process? The answer wasn't clear, but one thing was certain: whatever came next, I wasn't going to back down. Not now. Not when I was this close to something bigger than I had ever imagined. The next few days were a whirlwind. I woke up early each morning to the soft light streaming through the large windows of my room, and each day seemed to blend into the next. Carla had kept me busy, showing me the ins and outs of the mansion, introducing me to the people who ran the household, and giving me assignments that felt increasingly demanding. But despite the constant motion, there was a tension that hung in the air, a sense that something bigger was unfolding, something I wasn't yet fully a part of. It was during one of these long days that I first caught sight of her. I was in the kitchen, preparing a few dishes as part of my duties, when a sleek black limousine pulled up to the front of the mansion. The engine of the car hummed as it came to a slow stop, and I found myself watching it through the kitchen window. The door of the limousine opened, and out stepped a woman. She was tall, her posture elegant, and she wore a designer dress that shimmered in the sunlight. I watched her approach the mansion, her heels clicking against the stone path as she walked toward the entrance. Carla, who had been giving me instructions, stopped and looked toward the door. "That's her," Carla muttered, her voice tight. "The one who's been keeping an eye on you." I frowned, confused. "Who?" "Her name's Veronica," Carla explained. "She's someone who can make or break you in this world. If you impress her, you'll go far. If you don't, well, you'll be stuck doing the same thing forever." I felt a knot form in my stomach. "What does she want with me?" Carla didn't answer immediately. She just gave me a cold, calculating smile. "You'll find out soon enough." The tension in the room thickened, and I couldn't shake the feeling that something was about to happen, something that would change everything. Veronica entered the house a few moments later, and Carla motioned for me to follow her. We made our way to the grand foyer, where Veronica stood talking with Mr. Bellamy, her sharp eyes scanning everything around her, as if she were evaluating every little detail. When she saw us approach, she turned her attention to me. Her gaze was intense, almost too intense. I stood there, feeling like I was under a microscope. "Well, well," Veronica said, her voice smooth as silk. "So this is the girl Carla's been raving about." I nodded, trying to seem confident despite my nervousness. "I'm Chloe." Veronica's lips curled into a slight smile, but there was something cold behind it. "I've heard a lot about you, Chloe. I must say, I'm curious to see if you live up to the hype." I swallowed hard. "I'm willing to do whatever it takes." She raised an eyebrow, clearly intrigued. "That's what they all say." With that, she turned and walked toward a nearby sitting room, gesturing for us to follow. As I walked behind her, I couldn't help but feel like this was my moment, my chance to prove that I was more than just someone who cleaned up after people. But the more I watched Veronica, the more I realized how high the stakes were. She was someone who could snap her fingers and change everything, and I had no idea what she was truly capable of. Once we were seated in the sitting room, Veronica leaned forward, her eyes never leaving me. "I want you to do something for me, Chloe. Something important." I nodded, eager to show her that I was ready for anything. "What is it?" She smiled, but there was no warmth in her expression. "I need you to meet someone. Someone who can help you understand what this life really means. But I warn you, he's not an easy person to deal with." "Who is he?" I asked, my heart pounding in my chest. Veronica didn't answer immediately. She just stood up and walked over to a small table near the window, where she picked up a phone and dialed a number. After a few moments, she spoke into the receiver. "It's me. I need you to meet someone." "Yes, today. It's time." She hung up the phone and turned back toward me. "You'll meet him soon. But remember this, he's not someone you want to disappoint. He's dangerous, and he can make your life miserable if he chooses to. But if you impress him, you'll be untouchable." I stared at her, trying to process everything she was saying. "Who is he?" Veronica gave me a cold smile, but didn't answer my question. Instead, she turned and gestured for me to follow her again. "I'll take you to him." As we walked down the long hallways of the mansion, my mind raced with questions. Who was this person? What did Veronica mean by dangerous? And why was she trusting me with something so important? The closer we got to the end of the hallway, the more anxious I became. Finally, we reached a large set of double doors. Veronica pushed them open, revealing a dimly lit room. In the center of the room, a man sat in a large chair, his back to us. He didn't move or acknowledge our presence, but the air in the room felt heavy, almost suffocating. Veronica stepped forward, her heels clicking against the floor. "This is him," she said quietly, her tone suddenly serious. "This is the man who can make your dreams, or your nightmares, come true." She turned to me, and for the first time, there was a hint of something like pity in her eyes. "Good luck, Chloe, you're going to need it." Before I could say anything, Veronica left the room, closing the door behind her. I was left alone in the dark, with the man who had the power to change everything. I didn't know what to expect, but one thing was clear: this was no longer just about proving myself. It was about survival. As I stood there, waiting for the man to speak, I couldn't help but wonder if I was in over my head. Then slowly, he turned his chair toward me, revealing his face. And in that moment, I realized just how much trouble I was truly in. His eyes locked with mine, piercing through the dimly lit room like daggers. I froze. I couldn't tear my gaze away. His presence was overwhelming, a cold, calculating energy radiating from him. The man sitting before me wasn't just anyone. I could feel it in the air. He was someone powerful, someone dangerous. He leaned back in his chair, studying me silently, for what felt like an eternity. I swallowed hard, trying to steady my nerves, but my hands were trembling. What had I gotten myself into? "Sit," he commanded, his voice deep and smooth, yet with an edge that sent a shiver down my spine. I took a tentative step forward, unsure whether to follow or retreat. But something in the way he watched me made me hesitate. There was no room for fear. I needed to stand my ground. So I sat across from him, my body tense, my heart racing. "Tell me why you think you belong here," he said, his tone nonchalant, but with an underlying pressure. I couldn't believe he was asking me that. The question seemed so simple, yet in that moment, it felt like the hardest thing in the world to answer. What did I even belong to? This life, this mansion, this world of power and wealth. "I've been working hard," I said, my voice shaky at first, but I quickly regained my composure. "I've been doing everything I can to prove myself. I want to be someone. I want to be more than what I was." He didn't respond immediately. Instead, he just kept staring at me with those cold eyes. I could feel the weight of his gaze, like he was stripping me bare, looking for any weakness. "I didn't ask for your sob story, girl," he said, his voice growing more intense. "I asked why you think you belong here, in this world, in this place. Tell me what makes you think you have what it takes." I blinked, trying to gather my thoughts. What was I supposed to say? I knew I had to convince him, had to show him that I wasn't just some weak girl who cleaned up after the rich. I was more than that, but how could I convince him of something I wasn't entirely sure of myself? "I think I belong here, because I'm willing to do whatever it takes," I said, my voice steadier now, the words coming out more confidently. "I'm not afraid of hard work. I'm not afraid of what it takes to climb to the top." His lips curved into a small smile, but it wasn't a friendly one. It was the kind of smile that made your blood run cold. "That's better," he said, his voice low and calculating. "But I still don't know if you have what it takes. You see, in this world, it's not just about working hard, it's about playing the game. And you," he paused, letting the words hang in the air, "you don't even know the rules." A chill ran down my spine. The air in the room suddenly felt heavier, as though the walls were closing in on me. Before I could respond, he stood up and walked to the window, his back to me. "There's more to this than you think. There's a game going on, and you're not just a player, you're a pawn." I blinked, confusion flooding my mind. What was he talking about? What did he mean by all of this? He turned back to face me, his eyes now sharper, more focused. "But you can change that. You can stop being a pawn, and start being a queen. But it's not going to be easy. And it's not going to be pretty." My heart pounded in my chest, as I tried to make sense of his words. He was talking in riddles, leaving me with more questions than answers. "Do you want to prove you belong here?" he asked, his voice suddenly soft. "Then you'll have to do more than just work. You'll have to play the game better than anyone else. And I'll be watching every move you make, every mistake you make." He stepped closer, and I could feel the weight of his gaze, pressing down on me. One wrong move, and it's over. Do you understand? I nodded, my throat tight. I understand. Good. He turned and walked toward the door, but before he left, he paused. Remember, Chloe, you'll never be able to outrun the game. So, either play it, or be crushed by it. With that, he was gone. The door clicked shut behind him, leaving me alone in the dark room. My mind was racing, my heart still pounding in my chest. What had just happened? What kind of game was I being pulled into? I stood up, my legs shaking, and walked toward the window, where he had stood moments ago. The mansion stretched out before me, its vast grounds now looking more like a prison than a palace. I wasn't sure if I was ready for what lay ahead, but I knew one thing for sure: I couldn't turn back now. The game had already begun, and I had no choice but to play. As I stood there, staring out into the distance, I heard the sound of footsteps approaching. I turned around just as Carla walked into the room. She looked at me with an unreadable expression. "Did he scare you?" she asked quietly, her voice low and serious. I nodded slowly. "He's intense." Carla didn't say anything at first. She just walked over to me and placed a hand on my shoulder. "Chloe, listen to me. You don't want to disappoint him. If you do, it's over. He'll make sure of it." I swallowed hard, my mind still reeling from the conversation. "I won't disappoint him. I can handle this." Carla gave me a small smile, but it didn't reach her eyes. "We'll see, but remember, this world isn't kind to those who can't keep up. You have to be ruthless." I didn't know if I could be ruthless. But I knew one thing for sure: I wasn't going to let anyone push me around. Not now, not ever. As I walked out of the room and back into the vast mansion, I couldn't shake the feeling that something big was about to happen, something that would change everything. I had no idea what it was, but I was ready for it. The following days were a blur of unfamiliar faces and high-stakes meetings. I felt like I was in the middle of a whirlwind, spinning and spinning, trying to keep my balance. It wasn't just about proving myself anymore. Now it was about surviving. Carla kept her distance, but I could tell she was keeping an eye on me, watching my every move. Every time I walked into a room, every glance I caught, every word I said, it all felt like it was under scrutiny. The pressure was unbearable, and I could feel the weight of it on my shoulders. But I wasn't backing down. I couldn't. The mansion, once so intimidating, began to feel more like a home. Not because it was welcoming, but because I was slowly learning the rules. I was becoming a part of this world, no matter how uncomfortable it made me. One afternoon, I was in the middle of organizing paperwork in one of the side rooms when Carla knocked on the door. "Chloe, we need to talk," she said, her voice tense. There was something different in her eyes, something I hadn't seen before. I followed her down a long hallway and into a dimly lit room where a large wooden table was covered in papers. I could tell this wasn't just a casual conversation. "Sit," she said, her voice soft but firm. I sat down across from her, trying to keep my cool, but my nerves were on edge. I was used to the chaos by now, but something about the way she was acting made me anxious. "I've been watching you," Carla started, her gaze unwavering, "and I've been thinking about what you said, about wanting to belong here. And I've come to a conclusion." My heart skipped a beat. I wasn't sure if I should be excited or terrified. "You're not cut out for this," Carla said bluntly, her words cutting through the air like a knife. I blinked, stunned by her sudden bluntness. What? What do you mean?" She leaned in, her eyes narrowing. "You're too nice, too soft. You think you can play the game, but you can't. You won't make it. People like us, people like him, don't have the luxury of being nice." I shook my head, refusing to believe it. "I can handle it. I've come this far. I'm not going to quit now." Carla looked at me with pity, but there was something else in her eyes, a warning. "You might want to rethink that. He doesn't play fair, and neither does anyone else here. If you want to survive, you'll need to change. Fast." I opened my mouth to argue, but before I could say anything, there was a loud knock on the door. Carla quickly stood up and opened it, revealing a tall man in a sharp suit. His cold eyes scanned the room before landing on me. "I need to speak with Chloe," he said, his voice low but commanding. Carla nodded and turned to me. "This is Nicholas. He's been instructed to help you understand your place here. Don't make this harder than it needs to be." I stood up slowly, trying to mask the unease bubbling inside me. I wasn't sure what to expect, but I had a feeling it wasn't going to be good. As I followed Nicholas through the maze of hallways, my heart began to race. I had no idea what he wanted from me. Was this another test? Or was I being set up for failure? He led me to a large office at the end of the hall, where the man from the other day, the one who had warned me about the game, sat behind a massive desk. He didn't even look up when I entered, as if I were just another person passing through his life. "Sit," he said, without looking up. "We need to talk." I sat down, my hands folded in my lap, trying not to show my nervousness. What was this meeting about? What did he want from me? Finally he looked up, his piercing eyes locking with mine. "You've been doing well, better than expected. But there's something you need to understand." I swallowed hard, waiting for him to continue. "The world you're trying to enter is not for the faint of heart. It's not a world where kindness and good intentions get you anywhere. If you want to stay here, you'll need to stop being a pawn and start playing the game. And I mean playing." I felt a chill run through me. I had heard the words before, but now they felt real. It wasn't a game I was ready for. "You're being watched," he continued. "Every move you make, every decision you make, you will be tested. And if you fail, there will be consequences." I nodded, trying to process everything he was saying. "What do I need to do?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. "You're going to get a chance to prove yourself. You're going to show me that you can do whatever it takes to climb to the top. No excuses, no hesitation, just action." Before I could respond, he stood up, signaling the end of our conversation. "I suggest you start thinking about how far you're willing to go to make this work. Because once you enter this world, there's no turning back." I stood up, my head spinning. The walls of the office seemed to close in on me as I walked back out into the hallway. The cold air hit my face, and for a moment I couldn't breathe. I had no idea what I had just signed up for. Carla was waiting for me in the hallway, her arms crossed. "You heard him, right? There's no room for mistakes here." I nodded, my mind racing. "I heard him." She gave me a small, knowing smile. "Good. Then you know what you have to do." But I wasn't sure I did. The words were starting to sink in: play the game or be crushed by it. And now I had to figure out which side I was on. As I walked away from Carla, my heart was heavy with uncertainty. I had no choice but to play. But at what cost? The next few days were a blur. I found myself pulled deeper into this world that was nothing like what I had expected. Every move I made was under the watchful eyes of those around me. Every decision was scrutinized, and every moment felt like a test. Carla was still distant, but I could sense her watching me from the sidelines. I wasn't sure if she was rooting for me or hoping I'd fail, but I had made up my mind. I wasn't going to back down. Not now, not ever. Nicholas kept pushing me, testing me in ways I didn't think I could handle. I was forced to make decisions that went against everything I had ever believed in. But with each step, I became more skilled at playing this game. The world was ruthless, and it didn't care about kindness. But maybe, just maybe, I could still find a way to survive. Then came the day that changed everything. It started like any other. I was in the middle of a meeting, listening to the endless chatter about deals and profits when my phone buzzed. I glanced down and my heart nearly stopped. It was a message from an unknown number. "Meet me outside in 10 minutes. I have something important to show you. Don't make me wait." I felt a knot form in my stomach. Who was this? What did they want? I glanced around the room, but no one seemed to notice my unease. I stood up, excused myself, and walked out of the room, my heart racing. I stepped into the cool evening air, scanning the parking lot. It was nearly empty, except for a sleek black limousine parked near the entrance. The door opened, and a woman stepped out. Her long, dark hair cascaded over her shoulders, and she was dressed in a stunning black dress. She looked elegant, mysterious, and familiar. "Chloe?" she asked, her voice smooth and confident. I nodded, unsure of who she was or what she wanted. The woman smiled. "I've been watching you. I know what you're capable of." I stood frozen, unsure of what to say. "Who are you?" She took a step closer. "My name is Veronica, and I think you're ready for what comes next." Before I could respond, she handed me a small envelope. "This is for you. Take it. You've earned it." I hesitated for a moment, then took the envelope from her. My fingers brushed against hers, and I felt a strange electricity pass through me. I didn't know what it was, but I knew this moment was important. Veronica smiled again, her eyes gleaming with something I couldn't quite place. Don't open it just yet. Wait until you're alone. I nodded, still confused. As quickly as she had appeared, she was gone, slipping back into the limousine and driving off into the night. I stood there, holding the envelope in my hands, my mind racing. What did she mean by ready? What was inside the envelope? My fingers itched to open it, but I held off, just as she had instructed. I returned to the mansion, my thoughts swirling. Everything felt like it was building up to something big, but I wasn't sure what. The next few hours were a blur of nervous anticipation, as I waited until the house had quieted down. Finally, when I was sure everyone was asleep, I locked myself in my room. My heart pounded as I opened the envelope, revealing a single piece of paper inside. The words on the page made my breath catch in my throat. You've passed the test. It's time to take your place. I didn't understand at first. What test? What place? But then I realized. Veronica wasn't just some mysterious woman. She was part of the family's inner circle, the people who controlled everything. She had been watching me the entire time, seeing how I would react under pressure. And now it was clear, I had passed. My mind raced with the possibilities. This was my moment. I had made it. I had played the game, and I had won, but the taste of victory wasn't as sweet as I thought it would be. There was something hollow about it, something I couldn't shake. I had become just like them. Ruthless, cold, calculating. But in that moment, I realized that maybe, just maybe, I hadn't lost myself completely. Maybe there was still a part of me left that hadn't given up on kindness, on doing the right thing. I wasn't sure how I was going to balance the two worlds, but for the first time, I felt like I had the power to decide who I was going to be. I closed my eyes, took a deep breath, and made a vow to myself. No matter what, I wasn't going to lose sight of who I was. I would play the game, but I would never forget where I came from. And no matter how high I climbed, I would always remember the people who had helped me get here. The next day, as I walked into the mansion, I was a different person. Confident, strong, ready to take on whatever came my way. But deep down, I knew one thing for sure. I had learned the most important lesson of all. Kindness and good intentions might not always get you to the top, but they were what would keep you from losing yourself when you got there. And with that, I took my first step into the world I had fought so hard to be a part of, determined to play the game on my terms.